you're going to lose the friends who don't want the best for you. Those are the friends you want in 10 years? I mean, you lose friends. Well, maybe you gain new friends. Maybe you gain better friends. Or maybe, miracle of miracles, your friends pick up their mess too and move forward. Maybe not. And I'm not naively optimistic about such things, but you have to contemplate the price you pay for inaction. And this is something I did with my clients all the time. It's like, well, I don't want to change jobs. Well, no wonder. It's like, you have to go put yourself out to be interviewed. You have to send out 500 resumes. You have to be rejected 499 times. You have to polish your interview skills. You have to update your CV, which means you have to take a real look at the inadequacies in your preparation. And maybe you won't find a better job. It's like, no wonder you're afraid of that. Okay, you're in this job you hate and it's 10 years from now. How does that look? Think about that. You already know you're in a little hell. You know perfectly well it's going to get worse. Which is more frightening? Action or inaction? Well, the thing about inaction is you're blind to it, eh? So you can hide from it. Well, that's chapter 3 again. Do not hide things in the fog. Do not make the assumption that inaction has no price. And so then you think, I'm terrified of this, but I'm even more terrified of that. And, you know, people have asked me, for example, I suppose why I was willing or am willing to engage in the troublesome process of objecting when I think something isn't going well. Because I'm more afraid of the consequences of inappropriate silence. It's not that I'm brave. It's that I'm more terrified of the alternative. So I don't engage in the alternative. And I don't know, maybe I have a knack for that to some degree. Maybe it's a consequence of clinical training, but you know, I can walk into people's houses and look around and I think, okay, there's something up here. And I mean, people have that ability. You know, I walked into a house once and the dishwasher was in the middle of the kitchen and it was undone and had obviously been there for a couple of weeks. And the fridge had food in it that was no longer food. And the cupboards had unopened wedding gifts in them, like 5 years after the marriage. I thought, there's a lot of things in this household that are being swept under the rug. And that was all laid out in the practical environs. It's like they hadn't negotiated who was responsible for cleaning the fridge. They hadn't even been able to open their wedding gifts. It's like something's rotten, deeply so. And so I could see where that was headed without a tremendous amount of effort on the part of the people, and it didn't work. They were divorced, you know, a couple of years after that in a very ugly manner, or for very ugly reasons. Well, I knew where that was headed, you know, and under different circumstances, I would have said, what the hell is that box doing there? Oh, you know, it's nothing. Yeah, no, wrong. It's not nothing. That's a little portal to hell. I can see it, and so could you if you looked, but you won't. And I mean that literally, because people won't look. They'll walk into a room like that, and they will not look at that thing. Absolutely. And that's because if they look, they'd see. And they don't want to see, and no wonder, but the consequence of blindness is worse. It's worse. I mean, I have this, you know, my family would like some peace because I seem to be embroiled in one thing after another. And, you know, they have a point, but peace is very hard to obtain. And I can't be blind to what I see in the broader world around me. Not if I see it. If I see it, it's like, there it is. I'm going to say something. Think about it this way, like some things bug you and other things don't. I mean, there's lots of things that could bother you that don't, because you're obviously not bothered by everything that you could be bothered by. Lots of things in the world that aren't set right, but some of them really bug you. Maybe they make you cynical and bitter, you know? Oh God, look at how the world is constituted. It's so awful that I can't sustain my faith in the sight of that. It's like, well, you've got something to do there, guy. That's your problem. Why? Who knows? I would say the reason is that it's your destiny calling to you in the form of guilt over unfulfilled obligations. You have an instinct for growth. That's not a mystical statement. It's part of being human. We don't reach the limits of our potential. We're neotenic in some sense. We're continual children, biologically speaking. And so we're always transforming and changing in some direction. What direction? Well, your conscience tells you, at least in part, this bugs you. Well, it's your problem. Now, you may have to investigate that and straighten it out, because even your formulation of what bugs you is likely to be ill-constituted. But still, that's something calling to you, and you avoid it at your peril and everyone else's peril too. And it is, see, that's the way that your biology manifests itself in such a sophisticated manner. It's beyond you. It's like your better self is attempting to manifest itself by torturing you with a set of problems that you need to address. And then you can refuse that, but then all the meaning goes out of your life if you do that. That's not good. Rule 2 is treat yourself as if you're someone responsible for helping, and it's sort of predicated on the idea that regardless of your inadequacies and your malevolence, which, you know, I'm sure you have many inadequacies and no shortage of malevolence, just like everyone else. Regardless of that, you have a moral obligation, so that would be a responsibility, to assume that despite all evidence, that there's actually something of intrinsic worth about you, and that as a consequence, you're duty-bound to treat yourself like that is true. And then it turns out that if you do that, well, then your life gets better. And I don't mean happier exactly, although I would say it gets happier. I mean it gets richer and more meaningful and deeper and more worthwhile, and you become more educated and you become wiser, and you treat yourself with more respect, and you're a better model for other people, and you're a better father or better sister or better mother, whatever it happens to be. And you're less ridden by that guilt that gnaws at you, and shame that's there otherwise saying you're not what you could be, you're not what you could be. And that's a hell of a voice to get rid of, and it's certainly not one that's easy to ignore. So that's a pretty good, that idea that there's something divine, let's say, that resides within you of ultimate worth.